It wasn't long ago I noticed a strange noise coming from the air conditioning unit in the wall of the living room. At first it was almost imperceptible from the other noises such a device would typically make. It started out as a slight clanking sound, only when it was first turned on. I just accredited it to the age of the apartment and the appliances within. Realistically, they weren't all that old in the grand scheme of things, but without constant upkeep, things break down and fall apart relatively fast. Everything in the place had made at least some kind of noise. The washing machine shook, the dishwasher sounded like a jet taking off, and the fridge would kick on every few minutes and hum so loudly I'd have to turn the television up to hear anything over it. So you can see how it wasn't such a big deal for the air conditioner to rattle a little, so I put it to the back of my mind as just something that comes with age. That was until it started making it more and more often. I first noticed it when I turned it on, and the rattling didn't go away after a second or two. I'd better call the landlord so maintenance come fix this, I thought. After about a minute, it once again stopped, and the thought faded into memory. A few weeks passed, and I began to notice other strange occurrences. The scratching in the walls, the electricity flickering in and out, and the occasional thump in the night. Again, things that could all happen due to the age of the wiring. Maybe a mouse had gone into the wall, or a noisy new neighbour had moved in. All pretty explainable, I thought. Besides, I worked a lot and really didn't have a lot of free time to do much, so it didn't really bother me. But when things started to go missing in my tiny one-bedroom apartment, I started to worry. I hadn't been home in what felt like a couple of weeks, between work and friends. I was barely there at all besides to sleep and bathe. I figured I should do a thorough search of the place and see where my things could have gone. The TV remote, a calculator, several pairs of socks, and one shoe were apparently misplaced. So I went through room to room, which was really only 4 rooms, searched high and low to find my things, and as I did this, I noticed more and more small, ineffectual things were also missing. Strange, I thought. Where could these things have gone? I hit the power button on the TV and sat down in my once familiar armchair, now a stranger in my own forgotten home, and noticed something. The TV wasn't on. I flipped the light switch up and down, but nothing. Oh, for God's sake, this is getting a little ridiculous. I got up and twisted the knob on the stereo. Nothing. I went around and tested all the appliances to see if they were all still functioning. To no avail, as not a thing in the place was still functioning. Except, strangely enough, the increasingly loud air conditioner. It came on with a loud rattle and ran that way for several minutes until it sparked. I heard a loud pop, and then it too died. Maybe the power's out and it'll be fine in the morning, I thought half-heartedly. I had a hard time sleeping that night. The neighbours were especially loud, and being without the power made me nervous. I woke up the next morning to find the power was still out. I knocked loudly several times, but no answer. I decided enough was enough and went to the maintenance office to complain and hopefully resolve the issue. When I opened the door, the smell of stale smoke swept into my nostrils. The place was a mess, papers and ashes all about the desk, peeling paint, smudges on the windows, and a TV with only static bolted to the wall. Sitting behind the desk was a thin, greying man who looked as if he hadn't bathed in weeks. I told him about how everything was suddenly not working but the AC unit, until it sputtered its last. He gave me a sarcastic look, and with a gruff, he grabbed his toolbox and followed me to my apartment. You see, I would have called, but for some reason, nothing seems to be working. And I don't think the electricity's out because the air conditioner was running and suddenly died. Well, let's take a look, he said. He went over to it and unscrewed the faceplate and peered inside. He clicked his flashlight on and went to work unscrewing and checking different things, when he stopped suddenly and pulled out a tiny thing attached to a cord that didn't look like it belonged. He looked at me with a raised eyebrow. This yours? I couldn't even identify what he was holding. I don't believe so. What is it? It's one of those spy cameras. You haven't been having girls over and secretly taping them, have you? He gave me a sly grin. No! What the hell is that doing in my home? I was getting scared and a little irate. He shrugged. Well, let's see where this wire goes. He followed the wire with his hand and stopped to look inside. There's a little hole here. It goes into the wall. He pulled out his hammer and got to work taking chunks out of the drywall and following the cord. I was freaking out. Who put that there? Was this dirty old man watching me? Are there more of those? All those things went through my head as I watched him work. Well, this explains a lot, he said under his breath. What? What is it? I exclaimed. Looks like someone rewired your outlets over here. He backed away to show me what he was seeing. But why? My guess? Stealing your power. You sure you didn't notice anything? His calmness put me on edge. I thought back to the odd noises in my walls, the thumping, the flickering lights. What had once seemed such a normal thing had my heart racing. I noticed a few things here and there, but I haven't been here a lot lately. I thought it was just an old place. He gave me a skeptical look and continued following the ever-expanding bunch of wires and cables throughout the place. Some wires would branch off to more tiny cameras, hidden in vents and just in the shadows. One even wired into the eye of one of my pictures. How have I not noticed these? My heart started beating faster and faster as he discovered more. He kept going and one by one found all my electric had been rewired into one central bunch that led to the bedroom. My heart stopped. How long have these been here? Not long, I'd say. We check all the appliances and outlets before we rent the place out. Well, where does it all lead? He kept knocking holes with his hammer and following the dreaded cables until finally he stopped and looked into the most recent hole he made with a flashlight. The space between the wall gets a lot bigger here. I think I could fit in here. I see something glowing just around the corner. He smashed a hole big enough for him to squeeze through and disappeared into my bedroom wall. He appeared a few seconds later with a grim look on his face, and his skin had gone pale. He was no longer the calm, apparently fearless man he was before. You aren't going to want to hear this. There's a little room back there. Bunch of monitors set up all over and all sorts of crap scattered around. Looks like someone was living in here, but no sign of them there. He swallowed hard. This place is starting to freak me the hell out. If I were you, I'd move. I packed my things and left for my mum's that day, not wanting to spend another second in that place. Over the next few days, the police came and investigated the whole scene. They found 20 different monitors, all linked up to VHS players in that little room in the walls. Surprisingly, though, no tapes were ever found, and neither was the thing that had been watching me all those nights. A few weeks had passed, and a box arrived on my mother's doorstep. It was unlabeled, but inside was all the little things that had gone missing in my apartment. I also found a dirty, ripped piece of paper with a barely legible message scrawled on it. I like your new place much better. That thing has been there for almost a week. The figure in the window. It looks featureless, only skin on a human frame. And it's pressing itself against the glass somehow. I don't know how it got there, and I don't know how to get rid of it. At first I thought it was a prank, a doll or a mannequin that some jerks put there to scare me. In and looked out the same window, and it was looking in, staring at me. I walked around my house, yelling for whoever it was to come out, but no one was there. The thing is hairless and naked, and it didn't look like it actually had eyes or even a face at all. But its head is turned towards me when I enter the room. When I sit on my computer, I can feel its faceless hatred boring into my neck. But when I turn around, it's innocently turned in a different direction. Finally, on Thursday I tried to open the window, but it's stuck. I think the thing's hands are keeping it down. But I got a good look at its face. Its eyes and mouth are behind the skin, pushing outward. It stared at me, Smiling. Of course, I screamed. I pulled back a fist and smashed it onto the glass, determined once and for all to get rid of the glaring monster. I know I'm strong enough. That glass should have cracked. But it didn't. It shuddered under my hand, but it didn't break. And that smile just got wider and wider and wider, until I thought his head would break in half. It raised its own hand and bashed the window with its palm. It was mocking me, but I saw the faintest crack begin to appear where it hit, and I backed away. No way did I want that smile in the same room as me. So I got a roll of duct tape and started covering the window. I couldn't look directly at it. I nearly shit my pants knowing it was watching me. But I couldn't help it. I took a quick glance at its skin-covered face. A small peek. It was angry. That grin was now a gaping frown full of teeth. The skin had ripped away from its mouth, and I could see down its cavernous throat. A menacing rumble started to fill the house, and that hairline crack began to spread like splintering ice. I pulled down the duct tape. The rumble stopped. The split skin healed over, and it began to smile again. Now it's night, and the noise hasn't started again. There are no sounds, no rumble, no crackling glass. Everything's quiet now. I can feel its claws gripping the back of my chair. I can hear its skin stretching as it smiles. It's watching me type. There was a hunter in the woods who, after a long day of hunting, was in the middle of an immense forest. It was getting dark, and having lost his bearings, he decided to head in one direction until he was clear of the increasingly oppressive foliage. After what seemed like hours, he came across a cabin in a small clearing. Realizing how dark it had grown, he decided to see if he could stay there for the night. He approached and found the door ajar. Nobody was inside. The hunter flopped down on the single bed, deciding to explain himself to the owner in the morning. As he looked around the inside of the cabin, he was surprised to see the walls adorned with several portraits, all painted with incredible detail. Without exception, they appeared to be staring down at him, their features twisted into looks of hatred and malice. Staring back, he grew increasingly uncomfortable. Making a concerted effort to ignore the many hateful faces, he turned to face the wall, and exhausted, he fell into a restless sleep. The next morning, the hunter awoke. He turned, blinking in the unexpected light. Looking up, he discovered that the cabin had no portraits, only windows. Hello. I suffer from obsessive-compulsive disorder, which is an anxiety disorder in which people have unwanted or repeated thoughts, feelings, ideas, or behaviors. In other words, my life is a systematic pattern. But yesterday, I experienced a flaw in my own system. I awoke that morning in my lakeside home promptly at 6:45 a.m., as I do every morning. Before leaving my bedroom, I made sure to touch the doorknob 3 times. I have to. I need to. On my way downstairs, I made sure not to step on the second to last step. I never touch that step. I just can't. I made my usual breakfast of toast, scrambled eggs, and black coffee. I never eat anything else in the morning. Just always those 3. Turning on my iPad, I made sure to check the local news headlines, like usual. But today, something was missing. I couldn't place my finger on it. Did I forget something? The strange feeling lingered with me all the way to my car. On my way out the front door, I made certain to lock my door, then unlock it and lock it again. Driving to work, I couldn't help but feel like a part of me was missing. What did I miss? How could I have possibly missed it? I hoped that feeling would surpass while I was at work that day. It didn't. It stayed with me for 12 whole hours. I left the office around 6:45 p.m. to head back home. I stopped for the red light at the intersection of Marbury and Westway. But as the lights turned from red to green, I couldn't help but feel that strange sensation again. The only other person near me was the man driving behind me. He blared his horn for me to get going, but instead of accelerating, I just unrolled my window and motioned him to go around me. He did. I dreadfully sat there in my car, still stopped at the intersection. Something was seriously wrong. What am I missing here? I made sure to touch everything in my car, hoping that would spark my memory. I touched the dashboard, the leather seats, the emergency brake, even the roof. It did nothing for me. My hands began to tremble as I slowly drove away. This isn't right. I don't like this. Arriving home, I pulled my '74 Mustang into the garage. I wash my car every weekday, never on the weekends. I only wash the front of my car and the back, never the sides. No matter how dirty they get, I never wash the sides. I simply just can't. But something else seemed to be missing from my daily routine as I washed. No, not again. First the news, then the intersection, now this. Finishing up with the car, I jogged out to the backyard. Only jog. Never walk, never run. Opening up the tool shed, I felt yet another thing missing from my pattern. I screamed. This isn't right. This isn't right. This isn't right. I stumbled out the shed and gazed out at the lake. It always seemed to calm me when my anxiety got out of control. But tonight, all I wanted to do was sleep. I needed to finish the day. The next morning, I woke at 6:45 a.m. I touched the doorknob 3 times, made sure not to step on the second to last step on my way to the kitchen. I prepared toast, scrambled eggs and black coffee. I turned on the iPad, browsed the local news. It's still missing. I became aggravated. What is it I could possibly be missing? I began to feel nauseous. Hurrying out the door in a rage, I quickly locked the door, unlocked it and locked it again. I drove off to work. I tend to get a lot of work done when I'm upset, strangely. So at least I felt some accomplishments when I left the office at 6:45 p.m. I drove fast on my way home. Very fast. What am I missing? I approached the red light at Marbury and Westway. Come on, think. Think! A man was walking in the middle of the intersection, on his way to the other side. Why can't I remember? The man's head spun as he noticed my Mustang coming straight for him at 85 miles per hour. I noticed him too. A wave of horror crossed my face as I watched him dive to one side. A loud clunk was made as I crushed the man underneath my vehicle. Oh God. Jumping out of my car, I hesitated on what to do. He lay there, writhing in agony, making horrendous guttural wails. I popped open the trunk to my Mustang, lifted the screaming man, and heaved him in. I drove. Upon entering my garage, I made sure to wash the blood off the front and rear of my car. The sides were not necessary. After dragging his broken body out to the backyard, I jogged to the shed. Inside were black garbage bags, cinder blocks, and a hacksaw. After dismembering the man, I was able to fit both the remains and a cinder block into the bag. Dropping him in the lake was all that was left to do. The following morning, I made sure to wake at 6:45 a.m. and touched my doorknob 3 times before skipping the second to last step on my way to the kitchen. While eating my toast, scrambled eggs and black coffee, I browsed the local news on my iPad. The top headline, "Hit and run serial killer strikes again." I smiled. Back to normal. There it goes again. Something definitely moved this time. It was very brief, but out of the corner of your eye, you saw something. But wait, all the doors are locked, no pets, and your parents won't be home until 10. So there's no way something moved. It's just your imagination getting the best of you. Sitting alone in your room, the only light emitting from the monitor of your computer. You stare into the darkness for several minutes, just to be sure. Now you feel silly. What were you thinking? Of course there's nothing there. What are you, 6? Go back to what you were doing. 15 minutes later, as you prepare to go to bed, you're in the bathroom. The shower curtains shift. Wait. No. Stop spooking yourself. It's just an overactive imagination, filling your head with what isn't really there. You gaze into the mirror at yourself. You say it to yourself, slowly and clearly. Imagination. With a sigh, you turn off the lights and head towards your room. Laying in bed, you stare at your ceiling, dark and foreboding. Only the motion of a small fan disturbing the calmness of the night. A shadow from the light in the hall shifts. No. Stop it. It's your imagination. Just that. Go to sleep, you fool. But then, just when you're about to drift off to sleep, at the phase no one remembers when they wake, you sense something in the darkness. It's just your imagination, leering down at you, with a jagged, macabre smile. Right? Do you have someone you hate? Someone you do anything to hurt? Pay any price for revenge? If so, you may want to consider visiting Lightless City. To get there, go to any decent-sized city and find a deserted alleyway at night. Go into it and close your eyes as tightly as you can. Whisper, Lightless City, and concentrate on the darkness. You've probably noticed that there are faint colours and abstract shapes you can make out if you try to focus your eyes when they're closed. Watch those images go by. After a few minutes, the images should start to get clearer and brighter. When this happens, they'll start taking on detailed forms. Images of violent murders, deformed animals, and similar things. No matter what you see, keep your eyes closed. You'll start to lose track of time, but eventually the images will stop, and you'll see pure darkness. Nothing but deep black, no colours or shapes. When you're certain that you see pure darkness, open your eyes. You will now be in a very dark city. There won't be a single light or star in the sky. You should be able to see a faint dark blue outline of the tall buildings surrounding you. Make your way out of the alley and walk as quietly as you can down the sidewalk, in any direction. If you hear any movement, run as quickly as you can away from the noise. There are animals in Lightless City. It's too dark to make out the details, but they're the size of large wild felines and will kill any human they catch. Keep moving until you reach an area with smaller buildings, the edge of the city. A child will approach you, his face dully glowing, letting you see that he is eyeless. He will ask, "Will you share your light with me?" Say yes. The child will reach for your face and rip out your right eye. It will be painful, but there shouldn't be any bleeding or open wound. The child will thank you and leave. Keep walking, and a tall man will appear before you.
Whose light do you wish to have taken away?
Speak the name of the person you hate. As soon as you say their name, they will go completely and irreversibly blind.
Is your hatred satisfied?
The man will ask. If it is, say yes, and you will awaken in the alley. If not, say no, and the man will disappear. Keep walking. You will come across another eyeless child. Will you share your light with me? Say yes, and your left eye will be torn out, leaving you blind. Keep walking, and the tall man will appear again, although you, of course, will have to rely on his voice.
Whose life do you wish for the darkness to claim?
Say the name of the one you hate, and they will die. You'll not be asked if your hatred is satisfied this time. You'll not be able to return to the alley. I told you to make sure you really hated someone before doing this. You will spend the rest of your life wandering around Lightless City, blind, with only your hatred to keep you warm. For some people, that's enough. I spend most of my time in a hospital bed, occasionally walking the halls to break the monotony. Yet, no matter how much I wish I were able to leave, I'm simply stuck in this purgatory-like building. My roommate is an elderly man. His nurse said one day that he's 95. I can't even imagine living to 80, let alone nearly a century. I hear his cries of pain. He doesn't talk or even really move. Just repeated cries of pain. One time I called the nurse wondering if there was something she could do to help him. She replied, "This patient has requested no medicine and has signed a DNR order. We can do nothing for him." When she said this, my face went pale with the thought of the pain he must be in. She offered me my own room that night in order to get some peace from the anguish of the elderly man. I was relieved for the break. I'd been up for so many nights because of the gentleman's bellows of pain. As I lie on my new bed, silence, aside from the IV fluids doing their job. I softly drifted into slumber. I awoke in the middle of the night to a mechanical sound. It sounded like it was in the bed next to me. It was moving itself up and down. I'm a fully grown man. Not many things frighten me. And this I kind of shrugged off as an issue with the bed itself. Nothing to get worked up over. I called my nurse and explained. She also explained. "You'll be moving back to your old room in the morning, sir. Try to get some rest." Well, that was... whatever. It's a hospital. People can seem complacent very easily. I closed my eyes and tried my best to block out the sound from the bed. When I awoke in the morning, I sat up. It was raining outside, and even though the sun should have been somewhat noticeable, it felt like a winter's evening, ever getting darker. I flipped through the TV channels in the hopes of finding something, anything to make the situation better. The TV didn't work. No channels reached the pixelated glass, and I grew increasingly frustrated. Then, that damn bed started moving again. I'd had enough. I called the nurse and asked to be moved back to my old room. With no expression, she complied and pushed me by my wheelchair into my old room. But it was empty. The man was gone. I knew that could mean only one thing. He had passed away. That's why the nurse seemed cold. The man had died, and there was nothing she or anyone else could do about it. I felt awful. I looked at the bedding still sprawled across his bed and choked down the urge to vomit. Creeping feelings of horror and regret flooded my body as I crawled back into my bed. In the back of my mind, I repeated, "That's what he wanted, right?" As more time passed, my medication had started to settle in, and I was feeling tired. So naturally, I closed my eyes. But when I did, I heard something. Something chilling. I heard a wheeze, and then a soft, sickly laugh. I immediately opened my eyes and saw nothing. An empty bed next to me. I tried closing my eyes again, confident it was just my mind playing tricks. This time, what I heard full-on scared the shit out of me. An old voice, sickly and slightly amused, said,
"They'll never let you leave."
And then trailed off in laughter. At that moment, the bed next to me, the old man's bed, began rising up and down on its own, just as the previous bed had. I was going nuts, I thought, so I turned on the TV and, again, no channels, just static. But through the television set, I heard the same sickening laughter. I shut it off and called for my nurse, thinking there had to be some explanation for this. I grabbed the button and pressed it, but the damn thing just shocked me. It was like the old man was just toying with me now, so I began to scream for help. No answer. The lights went out. I yelled again. No answer. The bed next to me just continued rising and falling with short, clanking, robotic noises. I was scared shitless. I don't believe in the paranormal, but then, how do you explain this shit? I gave one last try on the nurse bell. To my amazement, it worked. The bed stopped and the safety lights turned back on. Relieved, I sprawled back across my bed. I felt heavy with stress from all this. I lied there in wait for what must have been an hour. I was chomping at the bit to tell my story to my ever-so-expressionless nurse. Then, as the overhead lights flickered on, my door opened, followed by my nurse pushing a new patient towards the bed next to me. With every fibre of my being, I tried to speak, tried to move. Someone had to tell them something was very wrong with this room. But it was impossible. My body was useless. I heard that evil snickering again in my head. But all I could do was blink while it said,
Told you so.
As the nurse finished hooking up the next patient to her IV, explained a few things, she slowly made her way to the door. She looked down at me with an awful, maniacal grin and said, This is Mr. Fraser. He has refused all medication and signed a DNR. We can do nothing for him. Wakey, wakey. Hello there, Alice. Would you care for tea? No? Well then. I've been waiting quite patiently for this day to arrive. It did take some time to find you, I will admit, but persistence is the key. Yes, I know you're a bit confused. I suppose I should explain myself. After you left a few months ago, I felt a bit distraught, shall we say. It wasn't very kind of you to do that. Not very kind at all. I've been feeling better lately, now that we can talk this fine day. I suppose I'm going ahead of myself. Let me step back a bit. After you left, I decided to forget this little issue. It seemed only natural to forgive and forget at the time. I continued with life as normal, reading books, going to work, talking with friends as usual. Friends. I suppose they were the spark that lit this fire. They began asking questions. Where's Alice? What happened to Alice? Do you know where Alice is? Have you seen Alice lately? I was so tired with the questions. They wouldn't let me forget about you. They wanted to torment me. I finally decided to look for you. I knew it would be difficult, but as I said, persistence is crucial. I searched everywhere. It took many days of frantic travel before I saw you, sitting calmly at the diner. I made sure to disguise myself well. You didn't see the hatred in my eyes through those ebony sunglasses. Now, part of the problem was imposters. There were so many. Thick and fast they came at last. Here, let me turn on the lights so you can see. Now, don't disturb their rest. I left them hanging here in their shame. Now they know the secret. Soon you shall know too, real Alice. By the way, Alice, I've made a rather interesting observation just now. Your hair needs cutting. Don't be alarmed by these shears. I know you're sensible enough to see that I wouldn't trim too close. Oh, don't mind the slight tremble in my hands. Though I'm only trembling half as much as you are. I'm just filled with nervous excitement, having found you again, Alice. You know, this tea is quite refreshing. Are you sure you don't want any? All right, then. You know, Alice, you're in good hands. We're all